The title of my talk today, finally have a title right off the bat, is Impermanence is Swift. And this talk is going to start with a discussion of a death. I know, cheery. And actually, what I'm going to say about Zazen, I didn't realize until I was in the shower this morning that it was inspired by something said to me by someone I was very close to almost 50 years ago on this person's deathbed. And I'm not going to go into it because it's too distracting in a way, but I realized that the emphasis on what I'm going to say about Zazen in part is due to what this person said to me on their deathbed. So I'd like to, so this is the death that I'm talking about now, of a person I'd worked with for the last 12 and a half years, where I work at a state agency as a psychological consultant. I had not really known this person outside of work. He was the chief psychologist at the state agency where I'm employed. And he, in fact, was chief of psychology at HCMC for many years, and also did something called consultative exams for the state agency I work for. And these are when we send people who we need more information on, we'll send them to a psychologist to do mental status testing, an interview, a discussion of how they conduct their day, what their past history of mental health treatment was, that kind of thing. So this person had done those kinds of evaluations for years. But as I said, I really didn't know him outside of work, just within the context of work. And in that context, he trained new psychological consultants. He was the go-to person for questions about psychology claims, which is what I deal with. He offered advice when asked about sticky situations between us psychological consultants and the examiners that we work with, without whose incredibly hard work and dedication, we would not be able to do our job. I'll just say that, but sometimes things come up, you need some advice, we would go to this person. Anyway, I can read this. Very recently, he went in for imaging of his abdomen due to terrible pain, and he was discovered to have stage 1 pancreatic cancer. This is a low-grade tumor, and he had a really good oncologist. He knew all the oncologists at HCMC, having worked there for so long, had a really good oncologist. And this oncologist decided to start with chemotherapy to shrink the tumor before doing something like surgically excising it or treating it with radiation. So in any case, he had a really bad reaction to the chemo. And he was seen subsequently in the hospital many times. During his last admission, he was placed on hospice and then transferred to home on in-home hospice. He died very quickly. After the 2 days, after the placement on hospice, he died very quickly 2 days ago. All in all, the whole process from start to finish took about 3 weeks. It was very shocking in its unexpectedness, its suddenness, and in the context of his seemingly good prognosis. His death shocked many of us at work, and it was the suddenness of it. The fact that he had been sick for such a short period of time. And then prior to that, seemingly very healthy, very active. He was not young, but he was very vigorous mentally and physically. And he had a very, very quirky sense of humor that sometimes I truly was offended by. But, hey, who cares? There were times he let me know that if he'd let me know when I got out of line in some of the things I said in my write-ups of claims about other psychologists about whom I could be fairly critical. Anyway, two teachings came to mind in the wake of his death. One is from Blanche Hartman, found in her book, Seeds for a Boundless Life. I'm sure some of you know this book. She was a longtime Zen practitioner, Zen teacher, Zen priest. She was twice co-abbess of the San Francisco Zen Center with Norman Fisher. She was Suzuki Roshi's student, and I assume his Dharma heir. In his foreword to her book, Norman Fisher tells the following story, and I'll just read this briefly. And for some reason, my eyes are really bothering me. So he tells one story about Blanche Hartman that Norma's told. This is the story about Blanche. Blanche is coming face to face with a riot policeman, a riot officer during the campus protests. And this policeman, this riot cop, was in full riot gear. And Blanche had pushed, she was a very dedicated, very zealous activist in the peace movement, the Vietnam peace movement. So she pushes her way to the front of the crowd, and she's face to face with this riot officer in his full gear and shield. And she looks him directly in the eye, and she sees that there is absolutely no difference whatsoever, no separation whatsoever between herself and this man, none whatsoever. And it absolutely transformed her life. And Norm has told the story a couple of times. And the second story that Norm Fisher tells, she approaches her teacher, Suzuki Roshi, with her accomplishment. Note that she can now sit without much thinking, following her breath faithfully. What's the next step? And he replies to her, bless his heart, don't think you can sit zazen. Zazen sits zazen. I really like that story. And as Norm Fisher says, these stories summarize a lifetime of practice for Blanche and all of us in our time and place. So the quote from the book, from this book itself, that came to mind is, every day is a gift. Blanche had had a heart attack and survived it. And this is what the experience taught her. And I'll read this to you. It's on page 20 of the book, and it's under the heading, Just Being Alive is Enough. In 1989, I had a heart attack. As I was leaving the hospital, I stepped out into the sunshine, and I had this sudden realization, wow, I'm alive. I could be dead. Wow, the rest of my life is just a gift. And then I thought, oh, it has always been this way. From the very beginning, no one owed me this life. It was just given to me. Wow. And in that moment of waking up, I found what a wonderful, rich feeling it is to be grateful, to be alive, just right now, right here, all the time. I don't have to have anything more special than knowing that just to be alive is enough. So When I read that the first time, I had a hard time with it, to be quite honest. I felt admonished. I felt scolded indirectly. And I felt that I was being scolded about feeling ungrateful, that I didn't have the corresponding sense of, yes, every day is a gift. But I also want to point out that really this gift of life that we all enjoy right now, right here, there's no giver, there's no gift, and there's no recipient. It's all totally empty. And I want to point that out right from the start. But nonetheless, that doesn't mean we can't be grateful. And actually, when I thought she was scolding me for not feeling grateful, I forgot that she was speaking directly from her own experience. She was not trying to outdo anyone or show anyone up or scold anyone. She was just speaking from the heart of her experience. So one morning recently, shortly after Jeff, this person at work, was placed on hospice, that quote came to mind, that life is a gift. Every moment is a gift. And I felt grateful to be alive and well. I didn't feel scolded. I felt grateful for the gift of being able to continue to practice. I felt grateful for Dharma Field. I felt grateful for you all. I can't say I was overflowing with joy. I don't have Blanche's ability to come forth with that. She could do that. But it was a much more subdued experience. Still, I felt a connection to her teaching. The second quote that came to mind was the title of this talk, Impermanence is Swift. I was going to be deliberately vague about the provenance of this teaching. As far as I recall, it was etched on a bell or on the wooden stand for a bell outside of a Zen monastery in Japan. The bell is struck regularly with a big wooden hammer. The words are a reminder. However, Blanche also talks about this on page 25 of her book. She says, throughout Dogen's teachings, the question of birth and death, or life and death, is called the great matter. On the Han, H-A-N, a wooden board struck with a mallet that calls us to the Zendo, we have this quotation that's often chanted every night in a monastery in Japan. And this is not the translation I've heard before, but it doesn't matter. Great is the matter of life and of birth and death. All is impermanent, quickly passing. Wake up, each one. Don't waste this life. And at the very end of the merging of difference and unity, it says, I humbly say to those who would awaken, don't waste time. It's a great, great quote. Anyway, so Blanche enabled me to put this into some context. And to put the quote in the context of the teachings, the three marks of existence are dukkha, or suffering, impermanence, and non-substantiality. Impermanence refers to the truth that nothing lasts. There is constant change, flux, and flow. Nothing can be pinned down because there's nothing that hangs around long enough to be pinned down. But it is the third mark, non-substantiality, that liberates. This is also known as emptiness. There is no such thing that doesn't last, There is no thing that doesn't last. There are appearances, there appear to be things, but careful investigation reveals them to be empty of self. Of persistence, of thingness, of substantiality. This can be perceived directly. As Steve pointed out in the last class he taught, in the last class he just gave, the name of which he and I both struggle to remember. Do you remember the name of the class? What? When there is no explanation. So it was that last class that Steve pointed out. I thought it was really astute. Don't think about emptiness. Don't think about the fact that although this cup, I can hold it in my hand, I can knock it over, I could break it, it rattles a little bit in the saucer. It has absolutely no thingness about it. It's empty of thingness, of being, of persistence, of substantiality. And Steve said, don't think about this. It can be perceived directly. Not easy to do. What do we want to do? First thing, start thinking about it, turning it into a thing, pondering it, making it a mystery. Boy, I know how to do that really well. Anyway, thinking is grasping, and grasping leads to confusion. How many times have we all heard this? To mistaking emptiness for thingness. And this is what Steve's student in England, Jamie Douglas, called making a beautiful play on words, thinging, Thing. I really like his play on words. Anyway, there are some recurring themes. Oh, by the way, holy cow, I am under strict instructions to make this talk last about 30 minutes. Is that true?
It is true. We've got a hook back there.
That's how it's gonna happen. What? So, and so, wow, okay. There are some recurring themes that I return to, including how do I forgive myself? And what is impermanence? I'm sorry, and what is importance? So with regard to how do I forgive myself? And I said, again, this came up in the context, and I didn't realize it this morning until I was in the shower. And these dying words of this person from almost 50 years ago came to mind. How do I forgive myself? That was not the question this person posed, but close. This person was calling on the universe. Anyway, in the formless admission, I'm never going to get through this. It says, all the karma ever created by me, since of old, through greed, anger, and self-delusion, which has no beginning, born of my body, speech, and thought, I now make full, open admission of it. And I found so much forgiveness in that one line, which has no beginning. All the karma ever created by me, since of old, through greed, anger, and self-delusion, which has no beginning. There's forgiveness there. This is why the Buddha decided to teach. He saw this terrible suffering and confusion engendered by being human, by feeling greed, by feeling anger, by being confused, by our holding on to our desires, our thoughts, our judgments, our opinions. And so I just thought, This which has no beginning is forgiveness, is liberation, is freedom. Oh, brother. Okay. I'm sorry, what?
You could stop right
I'm not going to, David. I have another 7 minutes.
there.
David was going to harass me at 10:30. I said, don't harass me. Anyway, in letting go of thinking of thoughts by opening the hand of thought, with no gaining idea, no thought of attainment, it seems to me that we forgive ourselves right there and then for all the striving and struggling we do in everyday life. Have you ever noticed when you sit in Zazen, I didn't realize it till I started preparing this talk, in fact, not till this morning, that absolutely nothing prevents you from coming back to here and now. Nothing. We can get so caught up in our thoughts. We can be millions of miles away. We can be hating, judging, loving, whatever. Nothing prevents us from coming back to this moment, to being aware right here, right now. That's a gift. That's forgiveness. That's really a wonderful thing. Nothing stops us. Nothing impedes us. It's only our intent. Are we intending to be awake in this moment? Are we, as Dogen says, do we want suchness? If you want to attain suchness, you should practice suchness without delay. That's the only thing that stops us. The intent to practice suchness without delay. That's it. Otherwise, we have the full support of other beings, all beings, the entire universe, just to do precisely that. That's forgiveness. I also want to point out what Steve Hagen says in Meditation Now or Never. By the way, I recommend the book. He says, we are already fully equipped to practice Zazen. We have everything we need in order to practice. Absolutely nothing stops us from practicing. We have it all. We just have to sit down and practice. I have known people who thought that you needed to do something special or get some dispensation or accomplish something before practicing. Totally untrue. We have everything we need to practice. And to go with that, to trust that, feels like an act of forgiveness. To really feel that in your heart, in my heart, that I have everything I need just to wake up, to be aware in this moment. Nothing's holding me back. That feels like an act of forgiveness. To practice with no thought of attainment, to let go, just to let go of thought and bring our attention back to awareness of what's happening right here, right now, is to forgive oneself over and over. Dogen says, when we let go, the Dharma fills our hands. I just love that. That's really beautiful. Of course, we have to make an effort, the right effort, as Suzuki Roshi points out. This includes paying very close attention to posture, to sitting correctly on the cushion or on the chair, it doesn't matter. To heating how we hold our hands, how we hold our heads, how we align our spine with upright, how we make the mudra with our hands, to how we, where we settle our line of sight, to sit with eyes open, breathing gently through our noses. A while back, I noticed that for me, as Dogen says, let's see, in the Fukan Zazengi, closing in on 10:30. Dogen says, Thus sit upright in correct bodily posture, neither inclining to the left nor to the right, neither leaning forward nor backward. Be sure your ears are on a plane with your shoulders and your nose is in line with your navel. Place your tongue against the front roof of your mouth, with teeth and lips both shut. Your eyes should always remain open, and you should breathe gently through your nose. Fairly recently, I found that yes, keeping my teeth and my lips shut, but I used to leave my teeth open, my lips shut, but leaving them shut helps. I'm not going to try to say how. I've just noticed that it helps to keep both teeth and lips shut. Um, I do notice that sometimes I gnash my teeth. When I do that, I'll start doing that. But hey, nothing prevents me from noticing that and not gnashing anymore. I don't have to clench my teeth, smash them together. I can just, nothing prevents me. Okay. One more minute until 10:30. Can I go 5 minutes over? Okay. So this gentle attention to teeth, to posture, to neck, to head, to breath, feels like an act of forgiveness to me. However, I am, of course, not advocating talking to oneself in meditation about how this is forgiveness, even to entertain the idea of forgiveness while doing Zazen is not doing Zazen. Just drop off all talking to oneself in meditation. As Suzuki Roshi said, give your frontal lobes a rest. Not Suzuki, Katagiri said, give your frontal lobes a rest. So 10:30, shall I just stop rather than move on? I could say just,
Moving on is one thing. Are you done?
I don't know how to answer that.
The answer is yes.
Well, let me just say one thing. The next time I give a talk, I do often think about what actually is important. And recently I commented in a class that I love reciting the 10 grave precepts. And I love it. And I love the fact that we all sit together and recite it. And that brings home to me, even more than sitting Zazen with people, that we sit with all beings, that we are supported by all beings when we recite the 10 grave precepts together. And it reminds me of what is important. And since I'm 1 minute past 10:30, I will save that for another talk. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Yes, Kathleen.
I always think of my 7th grade choir director in Carlsbad, New Mexico, who, 7th graders are kind of, have trouble paying attention a lot of times. And he was very, very funny. He was very humorous. And we'd get chattering and whatnot and not kind of listening to what he was saying sometimes. And he would say, meanwhile, back at the ranch, and it would all sort of, bring us back right there to what we were doing in the room. And so I always remember my 7th grade choir director. I think his name was, I don't remember his first name, but his last name was Phelan. Phelan? Yeah. And that's this little tiny town, Carlsbad, New Mexico. But I had some of the best teachers I have ever had, the most memorable teachers I've ever had there. And so when I get caught up, and I'm frequently very caught up in my own home for a variety of reasons, I get going on it, and I get going on some things that eventually make me cry because I've gotten going on them. And I just Mr. Phelan pops into my head. I say, meanwhile, back at the ranch, what was I doing here? Was I, I'm chopping these carrots, or I'm, whatever it is, I'm trying to wash these dishes, not always very successful. But that always helps me to kind of, come back here, which is really our practice. Even if we fail, we don't feel like we're doing the mudra right, or we're not, studying properly or something, or we're getting caught up in all the things that, Dogen talks about, we can just come back. And that's, I think it's really the crux of what we do here.
Right.
But the other things are important and help us initially to really, come back here, because we're, and not to get lax on it if we've been doing this for 20 years or 30 years or however many long years we've been doing it, but we can forgive ourselves for that too, and that, there's not some, the mudra police going to be coming around and with a
Exactly.
ruler. But I mean, maybe in a monastery that might
Exactly.
happen. So I've heard tell it does happen sometimes, depending on what you're wanting, what you're training for and how. But we can just come back and just follow our breath again.
That's what I meant by forgiveness. Yes.
Anyway, thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you very much. Yes. Nothing stops us. Nothing prevents us from doing that. Nothing. And you're right. That is very useful. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, there is a lot to be said for maintaining posture and paying attention to that. Suzuki says a lot about that. But as you said, there are no Zen police. That's not the point. The point is awareness. That's always the point. Heedfulness. What is that saying? I just read this in the Dhammapada about the heedful are as if the heedful never die. The heedless are as if dead. Something like that from the Dhammapada. I actually have it here, but never mind. That's for another talk. We're now at 10:35. Any other questions or comments?
Mary Dedder?
Yes, Mary, hi.
Hi, Mary. This morning when I was meditating, I noticed that you said don't talk to yourself during meditation.
Right,
And I found myself, I had all kinds of dark and depressing kind of thoughts. And so I started talking to myself and rethinking like how I perceive, things are not like that. In other words, this conceptual idea of that's in my mind is not true. It's not right. It does not reflect reality. So, and I felt better. It was like, okay, then back, like she said, back to the ranch, And what about that? What if I had just sort of tried to breathe through the darkness? Would that have been better?
oh boy, you're asking me to make a value judgment.
Well, you said don't talk during meditation to
Well,
yourself. I'm just
I can
wondering,
remember.
huh? I don't really know. I want to do what is the whole.
I don't want to violate, I don't want to denigrate what you use to get out of the darkness. I think I talked about this in the Eightfold Noble Path a couple classes back, and I'm sorry I missed the last class. We're making it up this week, correct? This Tuesday. But I was sitting at work and I was suddenly overwhelmed with profound despair. I just felt I was sitting at my computer, just typing away on my claim, and suddenly just overwhelmed with profound sadness and despair. And it was truly black, as you said. And I noticed it. And perhaps I felt like crying, and maybe I squeezed out a few tears, maybe not. But then as I continued to work, and I wasn't deliberately pushing it away, just focusing on what I was doing, the darkness, the disconsolate despair lifted of itself. And I can just tell you from my experience what happened. I didn't talk myself out of anything. It's just that all of a sudden, this terrible feeling of disconsolation and despair lifted without my really doing anything except not really paying heed to it. So
Thank you.
that's the best way I can think of to answer your question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's helpful for me to recall a lot of the talks and things that I've encountered over the years here at Dartmouth Field, and that reality is not what we think it is or what someone else thinks reality is. It is dynamic, it is unfolding, it is changing all the time, and that's a discomfort to the human animal. You know, it's not easy being a human being. And that things are shifting and unfolding all the time. We crave order, and we crave, you know, what we can expect, to know what we can expect. And we can't know those things. And, you know, coming back, it's just to right where we are and what we are doing or wanting to, you know, get done or whatever it is, but we have to bring some attentiveness to those things. Because there are times, you know, when we think we can just do something without our attention, you know, like muscle memory or whatever. Maybe there are some tasks that we can do that. And we tend to denigrate those tasks in our society. They don't require our, you know, thinking and whatever else. I mean, you know, there was one leader in our society who denigrated someone by calling her a house cleaner. Because maybe you can do a lot of cleaning without a lot of, you know, frontal lobe stuff going on. But it's important that reality is not what anybody thinks it is or what we think it is. And that it's not bad to be thinking. Oh, is something going on? Oh, okay. Anyway, I can go on and on. That's something I have to watch out for. So I just wanted to say that reality is not what we think it is. It's just this dynamic unfolding thing that's right in front of us in the moment. And it's very fleeting. And it's a weird thing, but you know, the more practicing sitting that we do, and also meditation, it's not just sitting or lying down. Our leaders have said that too. It's not just in this room. It's easier to recognize that it's just right here in this moment, this fleeting moment. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything else? All right then, thank you.